Can movies be cursed? We've talked about this with scary movies, but what about family movies? Over 85 years after the original, some strange events are happening with the prequels as well. Follow me down the rabbit hole about the Wizard of Oz franchise. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. Today, we are talking about the Wizard of Oz franchise. We're going to explore the layers of Oz from the 1939 classic to the modern 2024-2025 Wicked phenomenon that has literally taken the world by storm. Thank you, Abby and Paige, for requesting this episode. And of course, before we get started, I love to thank our sponsors. So thank you, Wise Wolf Gold, for sponsoring my podcast. Guys, if you want gold and silver delivered straight to your front door for as little as $50 a month, go to rabbithole.gold right now. That tells them that you're shopping from my podcast, which helps to support us. So we really appreciate that. Also, if you want really cool merch, we have a whole new line out right now. So you can go to stayskeptical.com, which is my website. You can click on the shop tab, and that will take you to the merch store. You can get shirts, hoodies, there's a blanket for sale. There's all kinds of things over there, different designs, really cool things. You can rep the rabbit hole everywhere you go. We really appreciate all of your support everywhere you are. And also, we have Patreon. If you want these episodes a week early and ad-free, go to patreon.com right now. Today, we are stepping behind the curtain of the cinematic masterpiece to uncover a history written in hospital records and freak accidents. You know the songs and the ruby slippers, but you might not know about the Oz curse. It's a legend born from the brutal physical toll the 1939 production took on its stars, leaving us to wonder, was the road to the Emerald City paved with more than just yellow brick? Let's dive in. We all know The Wizard of Oz. It was a Technicolor masterpiece. While it wasn't the first movie to be produced in Technicolor, it was the most iconic and influential film to use the three-strip Technicolor process, especially because Technicolor was still in its infancy at the time. But for the cast and crew working on the MGM lot in 1938 and 39, the experience was less of a fairy tale and more of an endurance test. Let's get into the Oz curse and the brutal reality of early Hollywood filmmaking. First of all, there were 5 different directors this movie went through. The first director, Norman Taurog, was essentially a technical director used to get the gears turning on this pre-production, casting, and early Technicolor tests. However, once the studio saw his initial tests, they decided he wasn't the right fit for this whimsical tone that they had imagined and reassigned him to the Adventures of Tom Sawyer movie. The second director, Richard Thorpe, filmed for roughly 2 weeks. He shot the now lost footage of Dorothy in a blonde wig and the original Tin Man, which is a story in and of itself that we will get into in just a little while. However, the producer, Mervyn Leroy, felt that Thorpe's footage lacked a fairy tale quality and was just way too grounded. Also, he accused him of rushing the actors, and Leroy was unhappy with the results that were produced under Thorpe, so Thorpe was fired, and all of his work was completely scrapped, and they reshot all of that. George Cukor, the third director, served as a creative consultant for only a few days during the production shutdown. Cukor never actually filmed a single frame. However, he made the most significant creative decisions. He told Judy Garland to lose the blonde wig and act way more naturally, and he redesigned the Wicked Witch as a traditional hag rather than this glamorous villain. He left only because he was already contractually obligated to begin directing Gone with the Wind. Victor Fleming came in, he was the fourth director, and he did the majority of this film. He is the only director credited on screen in the credits. Fleming was pulled from the film just days before completion and replaced to save the movie Gone with the Wind from its previous director, George Cukor. Cukor had been fired after clashing with Clark Gable and a producer on that film, and Fleming was known in Hollywood as the time as this like fixer guy, so it just made sense that he would need to go where he's more needed, which was Gone with the Wind, and then they brought in King Vidor to finish The Wizard of Oz. Vidor stepped in to film the remaining scenes, including the sepia-toned Kansas sequences and the Over the Rainbow musical number. Vidor chose to remain uncredited out of respect for Fleming, who had done the bulk of the work for this film. He just really didn't want to take away from what he felt was Fleming's crowning achievement. The director changes were the least of the issues on set of this film. The lighting was a primary source of misery for all who worked on it. Because the Technicolor three-strip process was filmed with extremely low light sensitivity, the sets had to be flooded with intense light to capture those vibrant colors. Cinematographer Harold Rawson, whose insights were famously documented in the book The Making of the Wizard of Oz, described the sound stages as brutally hot. To achieve the necessary exposure, every available carbon arc lamp in Hollywood was hauled into this studio. The heat from those lamps frequently raised the set's temperature above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Actors who were weighed down by heavy costumes and thick prosthetic makeup often collapsed from heat exhaustion. When I found out this detail, I immediately thought of the lion. So then, of course, I did some digging into that to find out that the Cowardly Lion, played by Burt Lahr, wore a 90-pound costume suit made of genuine lion skin. It did not breathe, and he was soaked in sweat within minutes of putting it on. This suit, although very authentic, was also incredibly gross. Not only was the suit made of actual lion skin and fur, it was also mixed with human hair. The source of the human hair is not known, so maybe they got it in a regular, normal way. Who knows? And in addition to that, as if that wasn't bad enough, because of the heat, Lahr naturally would sweat profusely, soaking the suit, which would then result in this like really disgusting body odor mix with lion leather. And then the costume had to be dried overnight with industrial equipment. And that really just like set in this like stink of him just sweating disgusting amounts into this suit. So the smell just compounded on itself the entire time that they were filming. And Lahr had to eat and drink through a straw during all of the filming because of the restrictive mask that sealed the costume to his skin. So he couldn't even eat and drink normally. So imagine that, like the temps are over 100 degrees, you can't eat and drink regularly, and you have this giant suit on. Of course he's passing out from heat stroke. Not only was the heat a severe hazard, apparently there were also real fires on set. Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch, suffered second and third degree burns during her fiery exit from Munchkinland. Her hospital records and later refusal to work with fireworks were proof of this fire and her PTSD resulting from it. The Disappearing Act really relied on this hidden elevator beneath the floor and a simultaneous burst of pyrotechnics. She was supposed to be lowered down while the flames went up. No harm, no foul. During the first take, the stunt worked perfectly. However, director Fleming wanted a second take just to be sure. It was basically like a safety take. On this second attempt, the pyrotechnic flash was triggered before Hamilton had fully descended into the trap door. The fire instantly ignited Hamilton's broom and the gauze veil attached to her hat. Because her hand was still gripping the broom and her face was still above the floor line, she bore the full force of the flames. Not only was the fire a significant problem, but her makeup caused another layer of danger. So the Wicked Witch is famous for her saturated green skin, right? We all know that. To achieve this iconic green hue, however, the studio used a copper-based green paint, which posed risks to human skin through prolonged or direct contact, and it was directly on her skin. Plus, copper is a conductor for heat and is highly toxic. So, as the fire burned her skin, the makeup began to cook into her open wounds. And then the crew rushed to her, knowing the makeup could cause severe copper poisoning if it entered her bloodstream through the burns. So then they started rubbing her down with rubbing alcohol and acetone to scrub this green paint off her raw burned skin. So she's got open wounds and they're pouring literal alcohol and acetone into these wounds. And she's getting copper poisoning all the while. Talk about painful. Hamilton later described this cleaning process as more painful than the fire itself. Buddy Ebsen was the original Tin Man. He also suffered from life-threatening respiratory failure that changed the trajectory of his career. So Ebsen, originally cast for the Tin Man part, was hospitalized due to near-fatal allergic reactions to aluminum dust makeup. When production began, the makeup department was still experimenting with how to achieve this like metallic sheen that they wanted for his skin. For Ebsen, they chose a dangerous method, coating his face and hands with white grease paint and then dusting him with pure aluminum powder. Ingesting aluminum powder can lead to gastrointestinal irritation, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and even gastrointestinal bleeding. And in some cases, this can be fatal. Well, after 9 days of filming, Ebsen began experiencing severe cramping in his hands and feet, followed by a terrifying inability to breathe. He was rushed to the hospital and placed in an iron lung, which is essentially like a mechanical respirator, just to keep him alive. The fine aluminum dust had coated his lungs like paint, preventing oxygen from reaching his bloodstream. He had essentially suffered a systematic clogging of his respiratory system and a severe allergic reaction to the metal. While Ebsen fought for his life in the hospital bed, MGM stayed focused on their bottom line for the movie because, money actually means a lot more than your actors' lives. Producer Louis B. Mayer reportedly didn't believe Ebsen was as sick as he claimed to be, and when it became clear that Ebsen would need weeks to recover, the studio simply recast the role to Jack Haley. They did not have time for Ebsen to get better and to come back. Oddly enough, Ebsen's voice actually remained in the finished 1939 film because the songs had already been recorded. The version of We're Off to See the Wizard you hear as the trio heads down the yellow brick road features Ebsen's voice, not Jack Haley's, because again, they wanted to save money. Also, as most people already know, the famous poppy field scene with falling like snow is actually 100% industrial grade chrysotile asbestos. This was a common Hollywood substitute for snow at the time, but the cast breathed it in for hours. And just for a little background, they did know that asbestos was harmful in the 1920s. They knew significantly that it was leading to lung cancer in the 40s and 50s. So, 1939, they know asbestos is not good for you, and they're still using it as snow. We were all told as kids that you see a munchkin hanging in the background as Dorothy, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow all walk down the yellow brick road before they have met up with the lion. And then us as kids, we go back, we watch the Wizard of Oz movie just to see this munchkin hanging in the background. This is about 48 minutes into the movie. Since then, this narrative has been officially debunked, stating that it was actually just a bird brought in from the zoo to roam the set, like just to roam free inside on the set to give it a more magical feel. Nevertheless, they have since edited out the silhouette because of these rumors, and of course, I am inclined to believe that the rumors are true because of the lengths that they have gone to debunk the rumors and then remove the silhouette. I guess we'll never actually know unless the family comes forward if a munchkin did actually hang himself on the set of The Wizard of Oz. The production of Wicked and The Wizard of Oz are separated by 85 years, yet they seem to share a spiritual DNA of extreme risk and logistical impossibility. Both film projects represent moments where Hollywood attempted something so massive it threatened to collapse under its own weight. For the impossible, we have to remember that The Wizard of Oz was filmed during the Great Depression, yet, despite the economy, internal memos and studio logs confirm a staggering $2.77 million budget. The parent company of MGM, Loews Inc., had even considered shutting down production due to the nightmarish costs and slow pace. For reference, $2.77 million in 1939 is equivalent to $64.1 million today. $64 million during the Great Depression for one movie. That's crazy. As for Wicked, Universal Pictures and producer Mark Platt officially announced the film in 2012. So, for over a decade, it was labeled a cursed project in development hell. It faced skepticism over how to adapt a 3-hour stage musical into a viable blockbuster. Both films also pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible, while The Wizard of Oz used the Technicolor 3-strip process, making the heat so unbearable the cast members fainted. Wicked's director, John M. Chu, and production designer, Nathan Crowley, chose massive physical sets for the set at Sky Studios Elstree. Also, they planted 9 million real tulips in the British countryside to create Munchkinland, which honestly, I'll take 9 million tulips over 100-degree lighting. Wicked also utilized a 58-ton physical train for the Emerald City Express, blending tactical sets with state-of-the-art CGI. World events and internal leadership changes also hindered both films. So, The Wizard of Oz went through 5 directors, and Wicked started with Stephen Daldry spending years on this project, only to be replaced by John M. Chu in 2021. The Wizard of Oz production coincided with World War II, and COVID-19 delayed Wicked. The director, Victor Fleming, was pulled from The Wizard of Oz just days before completion. About that same stage in filming for Wicked, the filming was halted due to the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike, during which actors and performers protested major studios. There were major disagreements over streaming residuals, fair pay, self-taped audition rules, and the use of AI. So studios wanted to scan actors' faces and voices for digital use, potentially without consent or fair pay, which Black Mirror actually did an episode about this. I don't know, it's in the most recent season of Black Mirror. They are literally telling you everything they're trying to do if you watch the Black Mirror episodes. Ultimately, the SAG-AFTRA strike ended with a new contract including AI provisions requiring consent and compensation for digital replicas. One of the most significant social shifts in both films is the casting and portrayal of the Munchkins. In 1939, MGM hired 124 little people from across the country to play the citizens of Munchkinland. While it did provide a massive amount of work for the performers with dwarfism, the set was surrounded by many wild rumors of rowdy behavior and deplorable treatment of the actors. Wicked, on the other hand, reinvented what a munchkin is altogether. In an attempt to avoid the backlash and poor aging of The Wizard of Oz's film's characterization of its actors, Munchkins in Wicked were no longer defined by height, but by a specific cultural aesthetic. This look was centered around the actor Ethan Slater, who we definitely need to talk about. Ethan Samuel Slater was born on June 2nd, 1992 in Washington, D.C. to his parents Jay Slater, a doctor at the Food and Drug Administration, and Ellen Goldmuntz, a lawyer who tragically passed away when Ethan was only 7 years old. Ethan was raised a Jewish conservative and attended Or Kadesh School in Silver Spring. Ethan later graduated from Georgetown Day School in Washington, D.C., and moved on to study drama at Vassar College in New York. He graduated from Vassar with a Bachelor of Arts degree in drama in 2014. Shortly after, Ethan began starring in musicals such as Claudio Quest, Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally, and SpongeBob SquarePants. He earned many awards, including a Tony Award, 2 Outstanding Actor in a Musical Awards from the Drama Desk Awards, and the Outer Critics Circle Awards, and the Theatre World Award for Best Performance in a Broadway Debut in 2018. Ethan then appeared in several episodes of television series such as Law and Order, Murphy Brown, and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. However, he returned to theater acting in 2019 until he was cast as Bach Woodsman in Wicked. In 2018, Ethan married a former high school classmate, Lily J., whom he had been dating since 2012. In August of 2022, they had a son together, but less than a year later, they separated, and Ethan filed for divorce in July 2023. Their divorce was officially finalized in September of 2024. Since the same month he filed for divorce in July of 2023, Ethan has been in a relationship with singer and co-star Ariana Grande, whom he met on the set of Wicked. Ariana Grande was born on June 26, 1993 in Boca Raton, Florida, to Edward Butera, the president of IBI Designs Incorporated, and Joan Grande, the CEO of Diamond Dog Entertainment. Ariana's career began in 2008 at the age of 15, playing Charlotte in the Broadway musical 13. From 2010 to 2014, Ariana became most famous for her role as Cat Valentine on the Nickelodeon television series Victorious and its spinoff Sam and Cat. Her Nickelodeon career was not at all as fun as it appeared on screen. She later spoke out about the inappropriate behavior of Dan Schneider, the producer, who a lot of people have talked out about. She and her co-stars described Schneider as controlling and terrifying. Ariana even stated in an interview that looking back at the shows, she can't believe how inappropriate the actors were made to behave, and what didn't make it on screen made it on their webpage. She said the shows were not appropriate for kids to watch at all. Ariana then began a singing career, being famously known for her 4-octave vocal range, extending into the whistle register, which it's the highest sound the human voice can produce. Other singers you may know who can also hit this pitch are Mariah Carey, Christina Aguilera, and Axl Rose. However, on May 22nd, 2017, just as she was becoming really famous for her singing, she was performing at a concert in Manchester called One Love. The concert was tragically attacked by a suicide bomber, killing 22 people and injuring many more. Less than a year later, her ex boyfriend, Mac Miller, tragically died of a drug overdose. His fans blamed Ariana, prompting her to turn off comments on Instagram because they were so upset about his death. She admitted to going through severe PTSD and having trouble processing her trauma, and she struggled for several years, but said her music was her healing therapy. In the summer of 2021, Ariana had her first audition for Wicked. However, due to a miscommunication, she prepared for both roles of Galinda and Elphaba, actually singing Elphaba's songs before it was clarified that she was primarily being considered for Galinda. On November 4th, she and Cynthia Erivo both posted a FaceTime photo of themselves with John M. Chu receiving news of their role offers. In multiple interviews, Ariana described how she had to go through an erasure process, stating, quote, I had to completely strip away the Ariana Grande of it all. I wanted to be Galinda, not a pop star playing Galinda, end quote. But in hindsight, it seems that she had been preparing for this role for almost a decade leading up to her audition, because in 2011, Ariana had tweeted about seeing the live musical Wicked, and she wrote, quote, loved seeing Wicked again, amazing production. Made me realize again how badly I want to play Galinda at some point in my life. Hashtag dream role, end quote. In 2018, she performed The Wizard and I during NBC's A Very Wicked Halloween special, celebrating the musical's 15th anniversary. All of that to say, Ariana had already been at least mentally preparing for this role for what seems like years before she ever auditioned. I could imagine that kind of pressure would be hard for anyone, and if she finally got a chance to have her dream role, what do you think that she would do to keep it? From 2022 to 2024, Ariana went through a significant transformation to become Galinda. This process started with her vocal retraining. She spent nearly 6 months with vocal coach Eric Vetro every single day, shifting her technique away from her pop and R&B sounds before she even had her first audition for the movie. The vocal training was designed to train her muscles in a way that honored the original Broadway version featuring Kristin Chenoweth. Ariana described her approach to preparation as acting as if the role was already hers, way before she was cast. She took daily acting classes tailored explicitly for the role of Galinda. She changed her wardrobe, even down to her underwear, during the audition process based on what she thought Galinda might wear as underwear. Something I also thought was very interesting is that she used a very meticulous color coding system with like sticky tabs to track Galinda's emotional states, transitions, and traumas throughout the script to become Galinda, down to her emotional regulation, which I'm no psychologist, but that doesn't sound very healthy mentally to me. But I think this is common in Hollywood, not necessarily unique to Ariana. She appeared for 5 separate auditions and reportedly spent years expressing her interest to producer Mark Platt. Platt says Ariana treated the auditions like an Olympic event. She would arrive early to circle the block to ensure that she was really ready for the audition before going in. She also worked with choreographers to develop a floaty walk, ensuring that even her movement felt more like a bubbly, high society witch than a modern day celebrity. Core strengthening exercises helped her maintain a perfectly upright, slightly leaning back posture, creating the illusion that her chest was being pulled upward and making it look like her legs were gliding rather than stepping. She also practiced a specific technique that would keep her weight entirely on the balls of her feet rather than alternating from her heel to her toe. By walking like this, it eliminated the thud sound that you would normally get from a regular walk and helped with the appearance of this magical glide. Another strenuous practice she had was spending hours a day focusing on ballet-based precision. She would focus on port-bras, which means the carriage of the arms. So her arms were rarely by her sides. They were slightly lifted as if she was holding a wand or a gown. She also used the Petit Allegro, a series of micro movements, including quick, tiny adjustments of her feet, so that even when she was like standing still, she looked as if she was vibrating with energy. She would practice her physical training in actual costume elements like high heels and heavy skirts before filming ever even started to begin, so that the weight of the clothes when they did begin filming wouldn't mess up her like floating illusion. She also spent weeks practicing wand choreography so the wand would feel natural, like an extension of her arm rather than a prop. In addition to all of this, she worked with movement coaches to develop Galinda-isms. These were physical tics like specific head tilts, hand flutters, and hair flips that she would practice daily until they evolved into her own muscle memory, until they evolved into Ariana-isms. And it gets crazy. So, this intense training, both physically and vocally, extended into Ariana's personal life and her connections on set. I mean, like, how could it not? Filming began in December of 2022 when Ariana met Ethan Slater, who, as we talked about earlier, was cast as Bach, a character in the movie who was infatuated with Glinda. The official timeline of their relationship starts in the UK, where Ariana and Ethan became really close friends at the beginning of filming. Ethan, his then wife Lily, and their son even spent significant time with Ariana on set, the three of them as a family. Between March and May of 2023, they were photographed sitting beside one another at the Oscar parties, holding hands on set, and when Ethan posted a Mother's Day tribute to his wife, they still had not even declared divorce yet on social media, Ariana liked the post. However, just a few months later, in July of 2023, news broke that Ariana and her husband, Dalton Gomez, had separated. 3 days later, people in TMZ confirmed that Ariana and Ethan were officially dating. Then, less than a week after that, on July 26th, Ethan filed for divorce from his wife, Lily. Ethan's ex-wife told Page Six that Ariana was not a girl's girl and that her family was collateral damage, which led the public to believe that Ethan and Ariana had been having an on-set affair. The erasure process Ariana had mentioned took on this whole new context because then it makes you wonder, did she brainwash herself so convincingly that she literally changed into Galinda? Therefore, the affection from Ethan's character Bach became her own reality, that he was actually in love with her and they were actually falling in love. It's possible. Especially, like, how do these actors get back to who they are? After they're done with their role, like, you've created this person in your body, you've turned into this person for however long. And you hear this about a lot of different actors, that they become the character that they're meant to portray. And then all of a sudden, they are just expected to go back to being Ariana Grande. Like, who are you when you're not the character anymore? Ariana's journey of erasure of her own physical, vocal, and relational attributes and personality leads us to the odd relationship she has developed with her co-star, Cynthia Erivo, who plays Elphaba. But let's get into some of Cynthia's history first. Cynthia Erivo was born on January 8th, 1987 in Stockwell, London, England, to Nigerian immigrant parents. Her mother, Edith Erivo, and her father moved to the UK from Nigeria, fleeing the civil war there. Her father disowned and abandoned Cynthia and her younger sister Stephanie when she was 16 years old. She was raised primarily by her mother, who was also working as a nurse and expressed many times that her mother was her biggest inspiration, even naming her production company Edith's Daughter in tribute to her mother. In 2013, Cynthia played Celie in the London production of The Color Purple. In 2015, she reprised the role for a Broadway debut, and critics described her voice as, quote, leather lungs soaked in honey, end quote. The performance earned her the Triple Crown of Musical Theater Awards, a Tony, a Grammy, and a Daytime Emmy. In 2019, she also played abolitionist Harriet Tubman in the film Harriet, for which she earned 2 Academy Award nominations. Cynthia has said that she became an actress out of a deep-seated love for performing, which was sparked by a solo in a nativity play at the age of 5. However, she also says she was heavily encouraged by her teachers, driven by a desire to prove herself after her father left, and firmly convinced that she was meant for specific roles, like the one she played as Celie. The role of Elphaba is one Cynthia says she wanted to play because she felt deeply connected to the character's feelings of being this outsider. She says she found a way to channel her own past experiences with her father's estrangement and sense of being othered into the role. She has stated that she felt the need to humanize the character to show her humanity, vulnerability, joy, and hope rather than just her anger. Cynthia was one of the last people to audition for the Wicked movie, which turned into this 3-hour session that reportedly left her with a 400-degree fever for 4 days. While Ariana was focused on mastering the illusion of floating, Cynthia was conditioning like a boxer, waking up at 2 a.m. for 2-hour workouts before going to the set. She did vocal stunt work, preparing for the physical toll of singing in the flying harness. She would sing during long runs and bike rides to condition her lungs to breathe differently than how she was singing when she was just standing still. She says she also used infrared sauna blankets to deal with the bruising on the inside caused by the heavy harnesses and stunts. She says she relied on a therapist to manage the emotional weight of the character. Similar to the horrific conditions of the 1939 set, Wicked's production required a level of commitment that Cynthia described as torture at times. During the production shutdown, she says she suffered a severe illness that lasted for over a week with a fever so high it made her skin hurt at the times when she was supposed to be flying in rehearsals. To prevent from going crazy during the strike delays of the filming, she had to consciously practice letting go of the role's intensity because it had taken such a toll on her mentally. Which is so wild because it's almost like she had to practice the character so much that her body felt like it had to really transform into a new person. At least that's what it sounds like to me. Cynthia and Ariana made a formal pact before filming to take care of each other. How, we don't really know what that means, not clear, but that's their pact. Apparently, they recognized the big responsibility and knew that they couldn't handle all the pressure from this role alone. The bond between the women became central to their lives on set. Co-stars described Cynthia as being super protective of Ariana, acting like a big sister, or some people have described her as like a mother figure. Some people have even speculated that there is more than just a friendly bond between them, based on their intense physical affection, the hand-holding during press tours, all of the touching, all like answering each other's questions, finishing each other's sentences. It's very odd. But both of them have clarified that their bond is just this genuine and tender friendship, not a romantic one at all. Both Ariana and Cynthia have come from very troubled pasts, an early love of performance, and dedicated conditioning for their roles. And not only do they both appear drastically changed by their characters, but they also appear extremely bonded to one another. The first theory about Ariana is that she subsumed her identity to the character of Galinda to escape her own trauma. Between the Manchester bombing and the death of Mac Miller, Ariana lived through years of public mourning and PTSD. Some have argued that the pop star version of Ariana was tied to so much pain that she used the erasure process as a psychological exit from that. She was also a Nickelodeon kid, which we need to take into account because Lord only knows what she went through while she was at Nickelodeon. Some people suggest that she has developed a chameleon nature, adapting to whatever her current circumstances are. From the intense color coding of emotions to acting as if, these are seen as a form of disassociative acting, where she isn't just performing, she's replacing her own personality with this safer, bubbly, fictional version to cope with her real world stresses. Another part of this theory is that her method acting caused her to mistake Ethan Slater for his character Bach. And since Bach is obsessed with Galinda, some claim that Ariana's erasure of herself made her unable to distinguish between her on screen affection and off screen reality. As for Cynthia, there's a theory that Cynthia's history of proving herself led to this physical toll so extreme it bordered on somatic illness. Somatic illness or somatic symptom disorder, SSD, means a person has significant distress or problems functioning due to physical symptoms like pain, fatigue, or headache that may or may not have a clear medical cause. And if you remember, she has had this history of like high fevers for days after a performance or distress of not being able to perform. And she also described having pain during the moments she was supposed to be flying in her harness, which maybe she does just have pain. I'm sure that harness is painful, but could it have been compounding the issues that there already were? Cynthia's performance history since she was just 5 years old has been defined by high stakes excellence, being noticed for her performances and chosen for such a high profile role in Wicked, combined with the must win mentality, ultimately led to the boxer like training for the movie. Some people have suggested the somatic symptoms, like the fevers and skin hurting, are a result of the actual character Elphaba physically manifesting in Cynthia's body like a spiritual possession. The most speculated theory about both Ariana and Cynthia is that they have entered into this like coven pack. The two of them got matching tattoos on their hands of a flower and the quote for good. They have both been super vocal in interviews about their soulmate level friendship and their pact to support each other unconditionally. Ariana has even referred to their pact as a beautiful coven. A lot of people, especially on TikTok and Reddit, have suggested that the women have been changed in an occult way, believing that the roles of the witches have a supernatural or psychological toll on the performers who play them. There are many clips showing them being overly protective of one another, speaking in eerie unison, and whose appearances have almost merged into very similar ones. They look alike all the time. If you look at pictures of Ariana and Cynthia before they started filming, they were both already pretty petite. However, the weight loss and physical changes that both of them have gone through to look almost weightless have had many people wondering if this is a result of the intense training or if there were drugs involved. Specifically, people have suggested that multiple crew members were taking GLP-1s like Ozempic, though this has not been confirmed. But at just 16 years old, Judy Garland was fed pep pills, which were amphetamines to keep her energy up, and then sleeping pills, which were barbiturates, to make her crash, sleep when she needed to. Then they give her the pep pills. That way she could keep working for 72-hour stretches. All the while being kept on a very strict diet of broth, black coffee, and cigarettes. This grueling regimen was forced on her by the studio and by her mother. Many have claimed that this was the beginning of the cycle that started a lifelong struggle with addiction for Garland, leading to her death at the age of 47. It's believed this type of treatment could have been happening to the Wicked cast as well. Whether it was forced or voluntarily taken, the possibility that the cast was given the modern equivalents of stimulants or performance-enhancing cocktails to keep them functioning under high stress has been widely speculated. Many people have pointed out that Ariana and Cynthia's hyper-emotional press tours made them both appear erratic, like frequently crying, finishing each other's sentences, and even acting spacey, which has made people believe they were both on mood-altering drugs. There are many claims that this curse isn't just about drugs or even about The Wizard of Oz filming mistreatment at all. In 1939, the cast of The Wizard of Oz was victimized by negligent chemistry and corporate greed. However, the cast of Wicked leaned into the aesthetic of white witchcraft. Ariana herself fueled this speculation in multiple interviews where she has called herself a literal witch and the witchiest witch, and mentioned that she does tarot readings on set and has had supernatural encounters with real demons. Ariana has this long history of interest in the supernatural, so she famously told this story about visiting Stoll Cemetery in Kansas, which is rumored to be a gateway to hell, which why you would ever visit that place, I don't know. She claimed that she felt an overwhelming feeling of negativity and smelled sulfur, which is often associated with demons. No shit, you literally went to the gateway of hell. She also claimed she took a photo of textbook demons, But when she tried to send it to her manager, the photo allegedly said that the file was 666 megabytes and could not be sent. You're literally messing with hell. According to her co-star Bowen Yang, Ariana became the unofficial tarot reader for the whole cast. She reportedly used a queer tarot deck and was noted at being very in her element, performing 3 card pulls for her fellow actors between takes. Yang was quoted as stating that if Ariana ever decided to stop singing, she could do tarot for a living because she was just like so good at it. Jeff Goldblum, who played the wizard, stated in an interview that watching Ariana and Cynthia perform was a spiritual and religious experience with an aura of nobility around them. Cynthia described her and Ariana's connection as magical and that their voices locked in perfectly from the very first time they sang together. But my favorite thing about Wicked, which I've not seen the new one, so I can't speak to that one, but I did see the first Wicked that came out with Ariana and Cynthia. And my absolute favorite thing about it is that they tried to create this, the government tries to create this false narrative. And the evil villain is actually the person doing the right thing. And the government, who's supposed to be doing the right thing, is actually the evil villain. And they prove to you that conspiracies are true. It was my absolute favorite part of the whole movie. I didn't really like the movie, not really like a musical type person, but I loved that aspect of it. And I have been asked several times on several occasions what my favorite part was, and I always say that the government is proving conspiracies are true. It's my favorite. Whether it is 1939 or 2025, The Wizard of Oz or Wicked, there are many conspiracy theories surrounding the stories and their casts. In 1939, the studio treated actors like props, resulting in a masterpiece built on real physical trauma, while the actors of Wicked treated themselves like vessels. The production was built on emotion and spiritual erasure. Why? From the toxic copper face paint of the past to the matching coven tattoos of the present, the legacy of Oz proves that to create a world so convincingly magical, the people involved had to lose a bit of their own reality, whether through pet pills or method acting. There is a real deep rabbit hole into wizard curses and wicked conspiracies. Let me know what you think about all of this. Is it all just part of the cost of being in a major Hollywood film? Could it be a result of popular GLP-1 drugs? Do you think there's like this supernatural presence behind the story of Oz? Let me know in the comments. But until next time, my friends, stay skeptical and I will see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast written, hosted, and produced by me, Danny Mercy. Special thanks to Lindsay for research and writing. If you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. Follow us on social media at rabbit.holepodcast and visit our website at stayskeptical.com for everything else.